The Packers have paid Aaron Rodgers a lot. Aaron Rodgers still isn't happy. Aaron Rodgers is happy to be in Hawaii, but he's not happy with the Packers. Peter, it was Monday night where Aaron Rodgers spoke to Kenny Mayne and finally launched into this monologue over it's all about the people, whatever. I think most people look at that and say, that's really not what's going on here. This isn't Aaron's concern about the people. It's about the person. It's about how he's been treated. And look, I talked to some folks yesterday about this. The ice is still in place. No thaw. Rodgers doesn't want to come back. Packers aren't going to budge. I don't know where this is going to go.
I don't either. But when watching that the other day, in the passive-aggressive Rodgers basically saying, I love everybody in Green Bay except Brian Gutekunst and maybe Mark Murphy. Or, that's what it sounded like to me. Look, the thing we still don't know, Mike, we know that Aaron Rodgers wants out in a bad way. We know that. You know what we don't know? We don't know what's going to happen if on August 15th, Aaron Rodgers hasn't been traded. What's he going to do? Is he going to continue to take $50,000 a day fine for missing training camp? I mean, if he doesn't go to training camp, that's $2 million that cannot be erased. And so you start looking at things like that, and you start to say, okay, is this an absolutely rock solid, I am not going back? If it's that, it's going to cost him a lot of money. And apparently, and I've never thought Aaron Rodgers was I need every last dollar. I've never thought of him in that way at all. But to me, I've thought that there's either that part of it or what happens between now and July 15th. Let's just say, if Jeopardy says, Aaron, we want you to be the host for our next season, for our 21-22 season, but we want you here exclusively. I mean, the condition of the job is you got to be here. I won't be shocked if Aaron Rodgers takes a year off from football. Now, and then we'll see what happens in the future. But the way I look at this right now, Mike, I agree with you. I have no idea what's going to happen. I bet the Packers don't either.
Well, and you mentioned August 15 with the implication that he's held out and incurred that $50,000 per day fine, which by rule now under the CBA for anyone in the second contract or beyond cannot be waived, cannot be wiped off the books like we've seen in the past where the team doesn't publicize it. But like when Hines Ward held out and racked up a bunch of fines, he went back and the Steelers are like, we're not going to collect that. You can't do that now for anyone not operating under his rookie contract. So like you said, $2 million is gone. I think he would announce his retirement in lieu of holding out if it comes down to it. Now, if he retires and sits out all year, he's looking at $11.5 million in signing bonus money that gets paid back. He's got $6.8 million in a roster bonus he's already earned that would get paid back. He's got $14.7 million in salary that he'll never earn, and it's one less year that he has left before Father Time finally catches him and prevents him from playing at a high level. Do you want to squander a year of football, or will you just say, I am reluctantly coming back because I love my teammates, I love my coaches, I love the fans, and I hate everybody else. I'm coming back for them. Because I feel like that's what he's setting up, Peter. He doesn't want to be the pariah like Favre was when he left. He wants the fans on his side. So he's on record. I love the fans. I love my teammates. I love my coaches. I think it's harder for him to give them the middle finger by giving the middle finger to the front office because they get caught in the middle of it, and they're the ones who are harmed by the reigning MVP not being there. So I'm still leaning on the side of he finds a way to show up and blame the media for making it a big deal.
I don't know. I mean, Mike, I've looked at this way all along, that, today is whatever it is, May 28th. And, there's a lot of difference between May 28th and July 28th. 2 months is a long time. And there are times for feelings to harden, and there are times for feelings to soften. And in my opinion, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to get friendly with the front office of the Green Bay Packers. But you then have to ask yourself, if you're Aaron Rodgers, what's my best option? Is my best option to say, I'm retiring? Is my best option to say, I'm a holdout, I'm simply not playing? What is my best option? And then you have to make a decision, I think, by late July. I don't think he really has to do anything for the next 2 months. It's pretty clear that he won't go to the mandatory minicamp. He'll just take the fine for that. But 2 months from now is when everyone really has to know. And, the NFL teams will be going to camp. I believe the Packers' reporting date is going to be July 27th. So that's exactly 2 months away. So I think there are 2 months for all reporters in the state of Wisconsin to not be able to take vacation because you never can tell what's going to happen. Because, I mean, really, we have absolutely no idea what the next step in this drama is going to be.
And one very real factor here, and I like to stay away from these things generally, but it is a factor. The new relationship, you have a new individual in your life who has influence over you. That's the way the world works. That's what broke up the Beatles, for crying out loud. And I know that there's at least some thought in Green Bay that how is he being influenced and what is he being told and how is he being, I don't want to say manipulated, but it's just the reality. When you have a new partner in your life and you're engaged, that voice resonates. And I think the Packers are leery about that unknown as well. And I just think that the Packers don't know what the hell's going to happen. They aren't going to trade him. Now, of course, we've heard that before, and I've said pay no attention to the man behind the curtain because a lot of times that's said for leverage. But look, Peter, they don't need to create leverage here. They're never going to get more for Aaron Rodgers, ever, than they're going to get right now. Unless he comes back and has another MVP season and wins the Super Bowl, they're never getting more for him. I mean, he'll still be a year older. This is the pinnacle. This is the time if you're going to do it. And they're just not going to do it. They want to keep him, period. So it's going to be, like you said, it's something where the folks who cover the team are not going to be able to take a week off, much less a day off, because you never know when we're going to get the next development from Aaron Rodgers.
And I think part of that means, Mike, that in the next 6 to 8 weeks, that there's going to be much hue and cry probably about very little, because I think this is going to go right up to the deadline, and maybe even beyond the deadline, maybe even into August. But I just don't see anything happening in the next, 7 or 8 weeks, because I just think, and you're right about the impact of Shailene Woodley on his life. I mean, nobody has any idea what that is. Anybody who says they do, I'm sure, unless they're close to the family, is just rumor mongering. So I have no idea what that's going to be. You have no idea what it's going to be. And I think there are some times, Mike, you have maintained throughout all this, Aaron Rodgers needs to come clean, and he needs to say exactly what he's mad at and what he's angry about and all this stuff. And we now are pretty sure that he's never going to do that. That's not how he does business. Whether you like it or whether you don't like it, you're not going to hear from Aaron Rodgers. My big problem is with Brian Gutekunst, and here's why. And so that's not who he's going to be. And you have to decide, are you willing to accept everything, the entire Aaron Rodgers package, the passive-aggressive part of Aaron Rodgers, the greatness on the field, the fact that he's got a ton of other interests in life, and he very well may exercise them. So that is the modern Aaron Rodgers. That's the modern NFL quarterback. And we just have to see where it goes.
Here's one scenario that I believe the Packers have on their radar screen for what could happen. We could see a scenario where Aaron Rodgers decides to not play this year, retires for this year. pays back a lot of money, misses out on his $14.7 million salary, and then next year, after the Packers have moved on, after the Packers have another quarterback, after the Packers have turned the page, then he pulls the Brett Favre, show up out of nowhere, deal with me, deal with my cap charge, deal with my salary obligation, and hope that at that point they'll have no choice but to trade him, just like they had no choice but to trade Favre after they had turned the page to Aaron Rodgers. So that's something to keep an eye on. No football for Rodgers in 2021, and then he shows up out of the blue next year, and the Packers at that point have their hands tied and they have to move on from it.
That could happen. I think they would want to, almost under any circumstances, end the drama before then. It's very hard to have a most valuable player sort of Damocles hanging over your franchise for under that scenario 14 months. And so I think whatever happens, it happens before that moment happens.
But, you mentioned the sort of Damocles, and I've used that reference as it relates to what the Packers have done to Rodgers, and this gets back to why he's upset. And, Peter, during that it's all about the people spiel the other night, he said at one point he threw a wrench into their plans by winning MVP, and that tells me he believed, as of last year, when they traded up in round one, didn't wait for Jordan Love to fall to them and just look around and say, who else are we going to take? They made the move up to get him, which has a different vibe to it. Then, it's one thing if Tua Tagovailoa had been lingering at 30. No, they jump up to get the guy who's a project. And Rodgers believed, based upon that comment that he made to Kenny Mayne, Rodgers believed that their plan was one more year with Aaron, and then we move on. He threw a wrench into that by being the league MVP, and they have been unable to talk him away from that mindset. Now, maybe it's the truth. Maybe he's right, and they're just trying to engage in damage control. But as long as he believes that they were going to move on from him after the 2020 season, then why shouldn't they let me move on if you were going to move on from me? Why shouldn't I be allowed to move on from you? And therein lies the rub. And I think that may be the core of this. It's not about Jordan Love. It's about the fact that the Packers hatched a plan that we're going to keep Aaron for one more year and move on until he has an MVP season. And they're like, well, we can't get rid of him now.
I remember on the Sunday of draft weekend in 2020, I was talking to Brian Gutekunst, and I said, what happens if basically Aaron Rodgers pulls a Tom Brady? And over the next 3 or 4 years, he's not good, but he's great. And maybe he wins an MVP or a couple of Super Bowls or whatever. Because remember, when the Patriots drafted Jimmy Garoppolo, in the next 4 seasons, in the 4th season, obviously in the middle of it, the Patriots traded Jimmy Garoppolo to San Francisco for a second-round draft choice. But in those 4 years, Tom Brady won 2 Super Bowls and an MVP. So what Brady did essentially is he said, I'll show you what happens when you take a quarterback and you try to replace me. I'll show you. And it's one of the reasons why I was really kind of, quite honestly, anti-Carson Wentz this year. When it seemed like he said, oh, okay, you take Jalen Hurts. Hey, listen, you have a good time with Jalen Hurts. I'm out of here. And my attitude is going to suck. That is what I saw in Carson Wentz. Now, maybe that's not entirely the case. That's how I read it. But I think in this particular case, I think there's a lot of truth in what Aaron Rodgers inferred the other night, that, he threw a wrench into the Packers' plans. But let me go back to Gutekunst for a second. He said to me that day when I said, what if Aaron Rodgers does this and you have to pull a Jimmy Garoppolo in 4 years or less than 4 years and trade Jordan Love to somebody? And he said, that'll be great for the Packers because that'll mean that we're getting the best great quarterback play out of Aaron Rodgers. So that's fine. Now, I doubt he deep down really thought that's what was going to happen. But in essence, I think they weren't thinking that we're going to trade Aaron Rodgers in 1 year. They thought maybe we'd be trading him in 2 years, but I really sincerely doubt that after 1 year, especially after Jordan Love not playing at all, that they then would have said, okay, let's trade a really good quarterback who's got 3 or 4 years left and put a totally unproven guy. I can tell you, Matt LaFleur would not have been on the side of making that trade.
And, Peter, that underscores, in my view, the dysfunction that is inherent to the relationship. Because, and this door swings both ways, the Packers, if that's what they were thinking, that we're not going to trade him after 1 year, he's still our guy. Good problem to have if Aaron Rodgers ends up playing at a high level for the next 3 years, and we never get anything out of Jordan Love, and we have to trade him like the Patriots had to trade Jimmy Garoppolo 3 years later. You got to talk to the guy. You got to tell the guy. You can't have that firewall between management and labor where you don't explain to the most important employee in the entire corporation, more important than anyone else, the highest paid, most important, most famous person in the entire Green Bay Packers Incorporated, because they have no owner. How can you handle him that way? How can you not have the conversation with him every step of the way? Alex Smith was on with Colin Cowherd the other day, and he made it clear that the Chiefs trusted him with the information regarding their top secret confidential plan to trade up and get Patrick Mahomes. Every step of the way, Alex Smith knew what was going on. How do you not, Peter, if you're the Packers, how do you not make sure that Aaron Rodgers is aware of exactly what you're thinking, why you're thinking it, and what you're planning to do, unless you're just fearful, number one, he's going to run his mouth and blow up your plan, or number two, nothing you say is going to matter. Either way, it's dysfunctional, and it makes me wonder why the Packers just don't want this thing to end the same way Rodgers wants it to end.
Look, you know, it has been said, and so I take it as fact, because reliable people have said it, that the Green Bay Packers did not call and inform Aaron Rodgers of what was about to happen when they took Jordan Love. And if that's the case, it's a terrible job by the Green Bay Packers. Terrible. Because, you know, look, whether you warn him, a day in advance or an hour in advance, this is far and away the most important guy in your franchise. And coach, president, whatever, GM, he's the most important guy in your franchise. And, how would you feel if you're Aaron Rodgers sitting at home, watching the draft, and you look and you're hoping that, hey, are we going to trade up and get Justin Jefferson or whoever? Or are we just going to sit there and take some defensive guy like we always do? And, imagine the shock of Aaron Rodgers when he sees that they've taken a quarterback, the guy who obviously is meant to replace him. And if that's indeed what happened, I do not blame him at all. And knowing Rodgers a little bit, I don't know him well, but knowing Rodgers a little bit, I have always thought he is angrier that they never told him what they were going to do or what the plan was, what the plan might be even. That he's angrier about that than he is about the fact that they took a quarterback.
And Sims and I talked about this yesterday, Peter. I think a lot of it comes down to trust. And did they trust him to be discreet with it or sabotage it by telling a friend who tells a friend who tells a friend who tells a reporter, and then the cat's out of the bag, that the Packers love Jordan Love. And then the flag is planted. But all you had to do an hour before this is done, you didn't have to tell him 3 days before it was done. An hour before this is done, you basically carve out 5 minutes, and you get the coach and the GM who have to leave their spot for a few minutes, and you carve out 5 minutes. It's an important thing to do, and you pick up the phone and you call Rodgers. That is something that I just think you had to do, and they apparently did not do. And I can't help but wonder whether they considered it and realized there's a chance they make it worse by telling him so late in the hour that they're doing this, because he quite possibly would respond to that by saying, why am I just finding out about this plan right now? Why? What? Wait a minute. You've been thinking, and there's
but the alternative. But the alternative in not saying anything is a lot worse than him being ticked off that he doesn't find out about this till an hour before it happens. Not finding out about it at all is obviously something that is really going to get Aaron Rodgers' goat, and obviously it did.
And that's why I'm fascinated by this question of, was this just a byproduct of the Ron Wolf mindset that's been baked into the front office? We run the show. You guys just work here. We don't have an obligation to tell you anything, to do anything.
Right.
You just show up and play football. And they didn't even think about telling him. Is that the explanation, or is it there was some deliberate discussion, strategy? They did think about it. They did talk about it. At the end of the day, they said, let's not open that can of worms right now, because that can of worms is going to open anyway. Let's just go ahead and do what we have to do this first round of draft, because it is true. This bubbled up yesterday, and I talked to somebody about it, and it is absolutely true. They had targeted Justin Jefferson. They wanted Justin Jefferson. The Vikings took him. Then they wanted Brandon Ayuk, and the 49ers jumped up to take Brandon Ayuk because the 49ers kept their mouths shut about what they wanted. And then the Packers, their top two receivers were gone. Instead of sliding back and maybe taking a Chase Claypool, they decide to take Jordan Love. But what makes it worse is the thing that shows that it wasn't just something that fell into their laps. They traded up to get Jordan Love. And maybe they traded up just because they felt burned by the two guys they missed out on, and they're thinking, we should have just traded up and we could have gotten Ayuk, especially Ayuk, because the Patriots traded down at one point there. They could have moved into that spot instead of, I think it was the Chargers who jumped up. But maybe they just jumped up because they didn't want to be 0 for 3 for the guys they wanted. But regardless, Peter, you nailed it. They need to call the guy at some point. And when you don't, you set in motion the dominoes that have brought us to this point. And I feel like there's still more dominoes. It's like watching one of those dominoes things. You don't know where the hell it's going. You don't know whether it's going to set off a rocket, whether it's going to drop into a toilet, whatever it's going to do. But we're just watching those dominoes as they keep falling.
I'm sure that the Packers, to some degree, would say, hey, listen, we didn't call Jair Alexander and Kevin King this year when we took a corner in the first round. We didn't call our talented group of running backs, any of them, when we took A.J. Dillon last year. So, and I think they can be comfortable in the fact, as Ron Wolf has elucidated very clearly and pointedly, is that, Ron Wolf has said on a couple of occasions now since this is all exploded, that basically, hey, listen, the quarterback wants to do everything. He wants to pick the players. He wants to do this. And, he's obviously exaggerating. But that is, you talk about the Ron Wolf attitude. The Ron Wolf attitude is that, look, here's my job. My job is to pick the best players. Here's the coach's job. Coach's job is to coach the players. Here's the player's job. The player's job is to play. Never the three twain shall meet. Well, times are changing in the NFL. And if you can't see that by now, you've already had, and with an asterisk, obviously, Deshaun Watson talking himself out of Houston. And regardless of what happens legally, I don't think he ever takes a snap for the Texans again. And Russell Wilson starting to talk that way. And Tom Brady, in a very gentlemanly way, basically leaving New England. Different story, obviously, his contract was up. But you're seeing now quarterbacks get more and more power. And so I think this is all a part of that, and all a part of, okay, what would you rather do? Would you rather consult with Aaron Rodgers, even though it might make you gnash your teeth a little bit, grind your teeth, because that goes against your ultimate philosophy as a team architect? Or would you like to basically say, all right, we're going to keep doing things exactly the way we've always done them, and make our most important employee angry to the point that he wants out? I mean, I think it's a pretty logical and simple answer. You got to compromise, and you got to be more in tune and in touch with the people who make your team great.
If they truly believe that failing to tell Aaron Rodgers that they were going to draft Jordan Love is the same as not consulting with a position player other than a franchise quarterback and one of the best to ever play the game, that explains why Aaron Rodgers wants out. And it's not about the people generally, because under Aaron Rodgers' monologue from the other night, you would tell Jair Alexander, you would tell Aaron Jones. No, this is about the king of the hill, the king of the north, the guy who stirs the drink for the Packers. They disrespected him. And now they are dealing with the same sense of uncertainty that he made them, or that they made him deal with all of last year.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.